Hello and good afternoon. My name is Charles Russell, Corporate Partner Services Associate with CHIME Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome today's online focus group. Before we get started with introductions, I'd like to cover a few details. If you have a difficulty listening to a live audio stream through computer speakers, teleconferencing is available. To display teleconferencing instructions, click on the Communicate menu to view audio options. It's an online focus group. Active participation is expected. Our CHIME Foundation partners spend a great deal of time preparing for these sessions, and your feedback offers significant value. The input you share helps these firms come away with better understandings as your needs as CIOs. How our products, services, and solutions can better address those needs. This benefits health and care across the industry. At the end of the session, please take a few minutes to complete the evaluation that will be emailed to you. Your feedback is valuable for future programming and will include a prompt for your honorarium information as well. As a reminder, you can take the form on a personal check, apply it to your CHIME membership dues, or donate to CHIME Education Foundation. Start this focus group session off, we'll do a brief roll call. When I call your name, please state your title and organization. Chris Boucher.
Yep, Chris Boucher. I'm the ACIO here at St. Luke's at Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Kurt Kwok.
Hey, Charles, Kurt Kwok, CIO for ProLiant Surgeons in Seattle, Washington.
Mark Lauderin.
Mark Lauderin, AVP and CIO at Jackson Hospital and Clinic in Montgomery, Alabama.
Audrius Polakaitis.
Good afternoon, Audrius Polakaitis, CIO, University of Illinois Hospital and Health Sciences System.
Sam King. Sam King.
I'm sorry, I triple muted again. My apology. I wasted 10 seconds of your time. Sam King, Chief Innovation and Information Officer at Caregiving, California.
Beth Hunkler.
Good afternoon. This is Beth Hunkler. I'm the IT Director for Dayton Physicians Network in Dayton, Ohio.
Anupam Sully.
Hi, Anupam Sule, CMIO, St. Joseph Mercy, Oakland.
Samesh Sagar.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Samesh Sagar, Chief Technology Officer for Regional Health Command Atlantic at Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Is there anybody else that I may have missed?
Yeah, there's Mike Patucci, IT Director and Security Officer for Slocum Dixon Medical Group in upstate New York.
Welcome, Mike. Anybody else that I may have missed? All righty, I'll turn everything over to you, Patty.
Thank you so much, Charles, and it's wonderful to be back here with many of you, and welcome to this focus group discussion. My name is Patty, and I'm going to be, leading this discussion on our telehealth and virtual care priorities in a post-COVID era. There are some polling questions throughout this discussion, and we'll use the responses to the polling questions for some discussion and debate. I'm hoping this is going to be very interactive. I'll start by sharing a little bit about my firm and my work, and then I'll also share some research that we as a firm have been doing and continue to do in the digital health maturity, in the digital transformation space in healthcare. So I hope that you will find this informative, and I hope you'll find the discussions to be energizing and illuminating, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. So thank you once again for joining. Let me go straight to, so just a little bit, bear with me for a couple of slides while I walk you through who we are and what we do, just so you get some context. Excuse me. Demo Consulting is a digital transformation advisory firm. We work exclusively in healthcare, and specifically, most of our work is with health systems. Excuse me. So the work we do comprises of helping health systems with digital strategy and roadmaps, technology strategy and partner selection, digital governance and operations. And we also have a research and insights platform that is a comprehensive repository of all of the digital health initiatives that the top 50 health systems have invested in, and profiles of some 400 technology providers. And we use it extensively in our consulting engagements with our clients, and provide them access to the platform as well. A little bit about me. I have been the CEO of this company that I started since 2014, so we're about 7 years, a little over 7 years now. Been in healthcare a long time. I used to be an Accenture consultant, and I've written 2 books. You can see them on the left, The Big Unlock, which I published in 2017, and more recently, Healthcare Digital Transformation, which I co-authored with Ed Marks, who was CIO at Cleveland Clinic when I started working with him. And that was published in August of 2020. And you can see some of my publications in other industry journals, and extensively quoted as well. You can see all my social media details here. I'll be sending you a copy of this deck, so you'll have all of this information in case you need to reach me. A little bit about the thought leadership that we invest in. We do a lot of research, such as this focus group, for instance, just to be in touch with what is going on in the market and how things are changing on a constant basis. And we've published several white papers. You can download them all on our website. Most of them are complimentary. And I'm also the host of a podcast, and I feature as my guests CIOs, chief digital officers, and also technology executives and startup founders in the digital health space. And I do urge you to check it out. You get to hear from practitioners in the space, what they're really working on, what are their priorities, what are their challenges. Some of those conversations are really, really fascinating. And I continue to be, a speaker. I've spoken at HIMSS and CHIME and a variety of other conferences as well. So that's a little bit about me. And with that, I'm going to jump straight into the first polling question of the day. Charles. So the polling question is, what are the top 3 digital transformation priorities for your organization? Telehealth and virtual care, patient mobile app, communication tools, remote monitoring / home health, CRM, chatbots, AI, and advanced analytics.
Last call.
Okay, the results are in. Telehealth and virtual care adoption, by far the number 1. Patient mobile app and communication tools, remote monitoring, home health. CRM, not so much. Early stages, I guess. Chatbots, AI, and advanced analytics. I'd like to really dive into this. I'd like to open it up, and would anyone like to comment on these results of the polling question? Love to hear your thoughts. Any surprises for anyone? Anyone thinks chatbots is further ahead than the polls show, or anything else?
I'll start. Audrey's here. I'd say no surprises. The chatbot question is interesting. I think we're still, at least my sense is, we're still trying to get comfortable around the idea of non-human interactions with our customers and constituents. At least in my head, that's still something we need to get over and get past. A little surprised with the CRM. In a sense that when you're talking about the management or a way to manage your interactions or to track your interactions with a customer, and all these other tools are great, but yet you're missing, to me, it strikes me we're missing the fundamental management platform. So without a management strategy in place, the rest of it becomes a little bit perhaps more ad hoc than we would want. But I think it does reflect reality, even thinking about our own organization.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd comment too that I thought CRM would have been a higher rated initiative. Some of these things can fall into a CRM, the customer and then mobile and, texting of engaging the patient, remote monitoring, home health. And from a chatbot perspective, we used chatbots during the pandemic to get patients scheduled for the vaccines, and they were amazing. We were able to cut our scheduling desk down significantly and get rid of some of the temps we had in there and cost savings, because we used texting to the patients, we used inbound, chatbots, outbound chatbots, and it was just phenomenal. A little too late in the game. We didn't get into it at first. We ended up in the middle because we had to build it, but yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, COVID screening and COVID-related appointments, those seem to have been the number one chatbot use cases over the last year, at least as far as our research goes. But I'd love to hear others' thoughts.
Yes, this is Sumesh. I would say if you would have shown me this list about 18 months ago, this list would have looked very different. As opposed to, well, I would say post-pandemic, but we're still in the middle of it. It has definitely changed our priorities. The entire paradigm of our priorities has shifted due to the nature of COVID. And some of these things were not on our list at all 18 months ago, hence they are on the top of the list at the moment. We continue to refine and implement new telehealth technology within our healthcare delivery system. We're also looking at patient monitoring apps and communication tool on top of that. One thing we're not really leveraging is the AI and advanced analytics. We haven't gotten to that part yet. We're still, I guess, dealing with the remnants of our new systems being put in. We haven't got time to get to that yet. Over.
That's an interesting comment to Somesh, because a lot of the in our work we find that it's not the lack of desire or interest. Sometimes it's the question of what to prioritize, and at other times it's a question of how much can you actually do at any given time. So that goes to the comment that you made about just haven't gotten to it. So if you've been consumed, for instance, with a major rollout of an EHR or an ERP platform or something like that, it just takes away bandwidth, and so you just have to prioritize. No, thank you for that. Anyone else?
Patty, from our perspective, this is Kurt. Telehealth and virtual care adoption have declined over the last 12 months for us. We quickly picked that up when the pandemic started, but it's really hard to maintain that. In orthopedics, it's really by touch and feel and look. So it's proving to us it's not as effective as we had hoped. And then we are lumping CRM under what we call patient engagement. That includes patient mobile app and communication tools. So for us, that would be just one item. And then chatbots, we're still a little bit struggling how we would benefit from chatbots or chatbot technology in our environment.
Great, thank you, Kurt. We'll take one more comment if anyone has it before we move on to the next topic. But I do want to share some research on this. So that's the next slide.
Yeah, Patty, I would agree with everything that's been said, and what Kurt just said around the fact that CRM, you will bundle that with the communication tools. If you consider that patients are now looking for omni-channels, so it's not just one way of communicating how we interact with them. So bringing CRM into that patch sort of makes sense. But a lot of it, if we're talking about AI and advanced analytics, I think data science is an area now where health needs to mature more. There's something about a data-rich ecosystem, health ecosystem, being able to make good use of all the data that is everywhere that nobody's knowing what to do with them. So I think there's a lot of emphasis now on data being the new oil and making sure we make good use of it for decision-making purposes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Those were great comments, and thank you for the discussion. I want to share, these are actually results of an internal survey that we did at a large regional health system last quarter. So these are pretty current. And so these are the high priority digital solutions that the organization, stakeholders across the organization recognized as high priority. So then the number of respondents is 98, close to 100. So it's not a small sample, it's a reasonably large sample. The respondents included clinicians, frontline caregivers, administrators, IT, and others. So you can see here, the number one priority is to assist patients to navigate and to understand virtual care and in-person options. This is the way they define the problem statement, when they ask people to rank these 12 initiatives. So what that means is obviously open to interpretation, but all of the options that you saw in the polling question patient mobile apps, helping patients with education around adopting telehealth technologies, helping caregivers actually and clinicians adopt telehealth technologies, understand the virtual care and in-person option. This seems to be the number one priority. Remote monitoring came out to be the number two priority in this one organization. And in my mind, the first and the second categories here are kind of linked. So if you have a program to increase adoption for virtual care, you're more likely than not investing in remote monitoring as well. And then all this stuff about reminders, nudges for care, wellness, care gap closures goes to the patient communications piece, I guess. Enhanced video visits with consumer at home diagnostic devices, lots of tools coming in which can actually remotely diagnose by using a device of some kind. And then it goes down the list. Chats, chronic wellness, post-discharge. The use of chats is actually an interesting one because, there's a number of chat is, at the end of the day, it's a technology tool. What you deploy it for, how you configure it, what use cases you go after, how you define the clinical protocols and the conversations, all of that can be very, very different depending upon the use case you choose. At the one extreme, you have administrative use cases related to billing questions. At the other extreme, you might have, a complicated mental health or behavioral health kind of a protocol that is defined in a chat conversation. It goes on. So this is really what we have seen in one recent survey. And, we keep doing this all the time in all of our consulting engagements. We typically do an internal survey just to get their sense of priorities. So hopefully this gives everyone on the call a sense of where you might be relative to, let's say, some of your peers. Anybody has any thoughts on this chart?
This is Beth from Dayton Physicians. I think that care navigation is a common concern. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're traversing the virtual, care, but I just think I work for a cancer care organization, and sort of like Kurt said, our virtual options have declined because of sort of needing hands and eyes on, patients, and our patient population is generally an elderly population that doesn't have virtual or understand, virtual options. So, I think that is important. Yeah. And I do think that goes hand in hand with health monitoring. And if there are any sort of remote monitoring capabilities, so especially for us, it's more about symptom management, especially for patients who are receiving treatment.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the next polling question then. How do you, Charles, while he pulls it up, how do you rate the digital maturity of your organization relative to your peer health systems? It's a fairly straightforward question. How do you perceive your organization? Ahead of our peer health systems, about the same, lagging behind. Thank you, Charles. Okay, that is a fairly candid assessment, I would say. Over 50% feel like you're lagging behind industry peers, about 27%, same, about 18% ahead of our peer health systems. I'm just curious to know, of course, not trying to put anybody on the spot or anything like that. I'm just curious to learn what specifically makes you feel like you may be lagging behind industry peers. Is it the adoption of technology? Is it something else? I'm just curious to know what goes behind it. Anyone?
Hey,
Hi, this is
Patty, I'm afraid I might have skewed the data just a little bit. I was a little slow on the draw. I was bouncing back and forth between ahead of our peer health systems and about the same. And I was just about to click on ahead when the screen went away. So it would probably, the actual results would, given the number of people that we have, would probably be about the same for the top two.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. All right.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, this is Anupam. So I chose lagging behind because first we have to define what peers are. Maybe most of us are looking at leading university systems and comparing ourselves to them. I'm at a smaller university hospital surrounded by 2 or 3 big academic centers. So compared to them, we are a part of a very large national health system. And our health system is trying to standardize all the IT processes across 90 hospitals. So yes, we are getting some people up to a certain standard, but those of us who are in more competitive markets, we are starting to lag behind. Those who are more smaller, flexible, can quickly adapt and move on.
That's a great comment. I think it's related to the competitiveness of your marketplace is what you're saying. So if you're in a highly competitive market where others are aggressively investing in digital transformation, digital health modalities, and you're not, yeah, that's a great comment. Anyone else?
And this is Wayne again. I'm sorry, I apologize. I was 1 or 2 minutes late and missed the introduction. So this is Wayne Sass. I'm the CIO at Monarch Healthcare in Irvine, California. And I had almost exactly the same comments as Anupam. It really depends on your perspective. We are a local care delivery organization that's part of a much bigger company, Optum. And when I look at our own, I would say, gee, we're probably lagging behind. But we're also part of a region, the California region, which is pulling together on this. And I would say that within that region, we're about the same as our peer health systems. But our parent company, Optum, is really probably ahead of its peer health systems. And it's, as Anupam was saying, it's all a matter of, well, what are you comparing? What are you defining as your peer?
Yeah, and I will accept the definition of your peer as your immediate marketplace rather than in the context of a national organization, because what impacts you is what happens in your local markets. So I will accept that.
I'd like to make a comment here. This is Audrey's. You know, I was waffling between the lower two, and I thought a little more optimistically, and I said about the same. But my thought is, it feels, pardon me, it feels like I'm chasing something, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm chasing. I love one of your earlier slides, and even in the surveys, or maybe it was in the first polling question, where you sort of quite discreetly delineated these various, perhaps, aspects or dimensions of this digital transformation. But maybe the cynical comment is, it's become such a buzzword that I sometimes think about, you know, loss of focus on what exactly it is that we're talking about here. Yes, the virtual care, yes, the remote patient monitoring, these things, finding ways to engage patients, allowing them to fully engage, sort of using new methods rather than old school traditional methods, but sort of beyond those discrete things, to me, it feels rather amorphous. Right.
That's a fair question. Let me actually take you to the next few slides. We at Demo Consulting, you know, this is a 4-stage maturity model that we use to help our clients put a framework around what maturity models mean. So this is in my book, and we describe it in great detail. We've been using this for a while. So model 1 entities are those who are looking, and this is very, you know, technology focused, but also technology and org model and governance focused. So model 1 entities, so model 1 is the first level of maturity. Model 4 is the most advanced. Each model builds on top of the one before it. So model 1 entities are looking at EHR as their primary platform for digital engagement. So whatever is in EHR, that's our digital strategy. That's basically what it comes down to. Model 2 entities look beyond their EHR platform. So for telehealth, for e-visits, for digital front door type digital features and use cases, remote monitoring, communications. They're looking at best-in-class tools. They're not necessarily limiting themselves to EHR. So they're probably using a combination of EHR and standalone tools. Model 3 is where the organizations take one step further and possibly appoint a chief digital officer, someone who's typically a clinician, could be an operations person as well, with the specific intent of driving digital patient engagement, maybe driving innovation programs for homegrown and partner developed solutions. And model 4 are these organizations that are taking a comprehensive view of digital transformation. It's an enterprise level strategy driven at the board level and the CEO level with a dedicated multi-year budget, a handful of strategic partnerships, including EHR, but also a couple others, maybe CRM, maybe cloud, maybe data and analytics, and then a robust model to leverage the startup ecosystem for innovation. You can imagine that this is pretty comprehensive and pretty complex. Now, we actually have developed a scoring model and an assessment tool that any of you can take. I'll include a link when I send you these slides. So when you take this assessment, there's 6 dimensions to the assessment: digital front doors, inpatient, care management, data analytics, IT infrastructure and foundational, and of course, org model and governance. Multiple choice questions based on the responses. We convert all that to a score. And these are actual data points from health systems that have taken our assessment. And obviously, I've anonymized the names of the healthcare organizations, but you can see their profiles. Provider 1 is a $6 billion entity with 30,000 employees. Provider 5 is a $27 billion entity with 130,000. Provider 9 is a $500 million. So we've got a whole range here. If you look at the 6 dimensions, and the scoring model actually converts everything into a percentage, right, out of 100. And at the bottom, you'll see the ranges that correspond to each model stage. Right? So if you look at provider 1, you go all the way to the bottom of the table, you see they are at 74% on a weighted average total. That corresponds to model 3. They are at the upper end of model 3. You'll see provider 5 is the only one which is above 80% and is at model 4. And that's what you would expect, because it's very hard, very complex, takes a lot of commitment and resources to really drive an enterprise-wide board-level strategy. And you can, as you would expect, the smaller organizations are much further behind. Provider 2 is at a 41%, provider 9 is at 35%. But if you look at individual dimensions, if you look at digital front doors, for instance, there are interesting differences. Some maybe, like provider, 8, for instance, has scored higher on their digital front door initiatives than provider, another one somewhere else. And then you see that their overall totals may still be lower, but they're doing well in digital front doors. One of the biggest indicators that we see for success with digital transformation is the org model and governance. And we have a series of very pointed questions in the assessment. Is there a chief digital officer? Does that individual report to the CEO? Does that individual have a dedicated budget? Is there an organizational roadmap and a strategy? And these are all, to our mind, very strong indicators of the progress that health systems make and the pace of the acceleration of transformation. So, I don't want to go through all of these numbers here, but if you just take a minute to look at it, you'll get a sense of how you can actually take something that is amorphous, to your point, Audrey, and convert it into a structured scoring model. And I'd be very happy to send you the link so you can take this assessment on behalf of your organization, and I can share this with the benchmark data. This is all benchmark data. And we've had many more organizations take the assessment. We're just showing a sample of 10 here.
Hey, Patty, the quick question. Among the 4 models, your best guesstimate or estimate, what percentage of healthcare organizations end up being Model 1, Model 2, Model 3, Model 4. I think
Yeah.
basically out of this cohort, for example, I'm just doing a quick, like we got about 40% in Model 1, I think.
Yeah. Well, I would say that more than half of healthcare organizations in the country today are still in Model 1. They're still relying on EHR to drive their digital strategy predominantly. Many are actually graduating to Model 2 because they're all realizing that EHR platforms cannot be everything for everybody. And the EHR vendors will be the first ones to acknowledge it. So they're looking beyond EHR platforms for best-in-class tools, right? And I'll show you in the next slide, actually, there's some interesting data. This will bring this to life. This is a heat map of how health systems have implemented digital front door solutions. So the legend here, the color code here is that the reds indicate not implemented. The greens indicate implemented with an EHR, a native EHR capability. The blues indicate, implemented, but with a standalone tool which has an out-of-the-box FHIR/HL7 integration capability. And the yellows are the ones that don't have an out-of-the-box integration. Why is this important? To your point, if the best-in-class tools out there do a better job than EHR platforms for a particular functionality, then you would want to implement them. Great examples here. If you look at Find a Doc, for instance, a lot of blues and yellows here, right? And practically no greens. That tells you that most healthcare organizations are implementing standalone Find a Doc, provider finders, not using the native EHR capabilities. Mobile apps, they are probably building on top of the native, like if you have a, My Chart, for instance, you're probably customizing it at the front end. You're building a wrapper around it or something to customize it for your patient population and putting in on the home page or the home screen, whatever features you think are important for your population. Online self-scheduling is mostly, standalone tools. There's also others here, like online check-in, for instance. It's all done through EHR. You don't need a standalone tool for that. So this heat map tells you, if you're looking at comparing with your peers, it tells you, if you look at Provider 5, for instance, they've done a few with the native EHR capability, but for the most part, they've gone outside to best-in-class tools. They are a large healthcare system. They have the resources, they have the appetite for it, and they're doing it. The smaller ones, not so much. Provider 9, they've done whatever they could do with EHR, and they haven't implemented the rest. It's a classic, that would be your Model 1, your classic Model 1 organization. And we believe that, about half the health systems in the country are in Model 1 right now, but they're rapidly moving towards Model 2 and 3. Any comments on this? Any questions on this? I am happy to, like I said, I'll be sending over the slide, but I'm also happy to share the link if anyone wants to take the assessment. It's a complimentary assessment. You'll get to see where your organization stands in this chart.
Patty, are you saying that on the continuum that Model 4 is the best choice?
No, I'm not saying that. It's a great question. Okay. I'm just saying that Model 4 happens to be the most advanced in terms of their maturity of digital transformation. But is that the right aspiration for your organization? Maybe not. Maybe you're fine at being at Model 2 because that meets your immediate and near-term needs for your patient population. So you don't have to go out and start scanning the startup landscape for the coolest solutions out there. You don't need to do that. Maybe you don't need chatbots. Maybe you don't need voice-enabled solutions. You don't need any of that because your patients don't care. Ultimately, what drives this is what your patients are looking for, your consumers are looking for. So the maturity model here is not meant to be a prescription for what you should be. Your prescription will depend on what your patients want.
So because what's confusing me is Model 3 doesn't necessarily seem like it's a better progression from 2. I mean, I understand 1, I understand 2, and I understand the value of 4. But to me, going out and doing point solutions or departmental things is not a good strategy in my book, but I've always worked for smaller organizations, and we've taken more of an enterprise approach to things.
That's good feedback. In fact, we probably want to go and, I will probably go and revisit the definitions. And we're constantly making adjustments to the definitions, but that is great feedback. We'll go and review it.
And
Right.
thanks, Patty. I think this last couple of slides, they speak to a number of key points in that the maturity model is quite, as you say, is contextual. So it depends on what you're dealing with at that point in time, in terms of the patient and the citizen you're serving. So if we're defining to what extent digital is enabling patient and citizens and patient outcomes, so we want to be looking at those patient-centric approaches. So I can see why one size doesn't fit all. There's no silver bullet here, is there? I think it depends on where you're at and being able
Yeah, and I want to link it to the polling question, because I asked the polling question before this was, are you ahead or behind your peers? Right. And this is an objective way for you to really assess that. If you think you're behind your peers, then basically you're going to have to relate yourself to some point on this maturity model, and you believe that your peers are at an advanced stage in this maturity model than you are, in which case you want to go in and do this assessment and see how you score. And we can do this in your market. For instance, we can do this taking the actual data for your organization and then substituting your peer group's organizations with publicly available data, and you'll still get a good approximation of why you think you're behind. For instance, if you're here and let's say you're provider 9 and you ranked yourself as behind your peers, and the most dominant player in your market happens to be provider 1, this table will tell you what they're doing that you're not, which leads you to believe that you're behind. At least for digital front doors. We actually share this whole heat map for all the other questions. There's some 64 questions in the assessment, and we'll share that heat map for all of them. Are they doing CRM? Are they doing chatbot? Are they doing, how are their org models? All of that based on whatever information is available. And we have a fairly extensive database of how organizations are driving digital, and we can, do the additional research on your particular markets and come up with what may be a relevant and actionable heat map for you. Okay. Any other comments on this before we move on to the next section? So, like I said, I will include a link to the assessment. Feel free to take it. We'll gather up the data at the back end, turn it into a report, then we'll schedule some time to walk you through this. With that, let's jump to polling question number 3, Charles. Okay. Question. So do you agree, strongly agree, or disagree? We have a good understanding of the digital health solution landscape for our needs. Speaking for your organization, do you strongly agree with that statement, agree with it, or disagree with it?
Last call. Don't know what's happening at the second, Patty.
When I voted, it disappeared.
Patty, can you hear me?
I can. Do you think you can run the poll again?
And there we go. It was like doing the wheel of death there. Sorry about that.
There you go. Okay, again, very interesting. Wow. There's no one who strongly agrees with the statement that you have a good understanding of the digital health solutions landscape. Agree and disagree. Okay. All right. Comments on this. What led you to agree or disagree?
This is Wayne. I was a little bit on the fence. I think, at least for me, the reason I didn't feel like I could select strongly agree is because I think that the landscape is still evolving so rapidly that even if I strongly agreed today, by next week, something new might come out.
That's right. Digital health startups raised close to $15 billion in VC money in the first 2 quarters of this year. And that was more than what they had raised in all of 2020. So let's chew on that for a second. What that means is that there are more digital health startups getting started up than we know how to keep track of. And a lot of them will disappear because that is the venture capital game. However, when you're faced with this choice of fairly new and what might seem undifferentiated, and on top of that, you've got your EHR vendor telling you, hey, we can do everything. You don't need to go outside. And then you've got the big tech firms, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Salesforce. They're all coming at you telling you, don't worry, our platform can build everything for you. You can see how this can become really, really challenging. And again, I wasn't expecting anyone to say that they strongly agree with the statement because, Wayne, to your point, you're exactly right. It's just the marketplace is evolving so rapidly that it's very, very difficult to keep track of what is going on. Anyone else?
I think most organizations have a general idea of where they're going or what they need to do, but sometimes your appetite for change, your ability to implement so many changes just isn't there.
Right.
Patty,
When it comes to the solutions landscape, you see so many companies. In fact, the ones, there's some that are spending so heavily on marketing that it's impossible to avoid seeing or hearing about them. It's a whole different matter how mature their solutions are. I'm sorry, someone was going to say something.
Yeah, it's that theme though. So with so much money, which disproportionately maybe allows them to invest in marketing, get themselves in front of you, they're all on with so many different organizations. They're all on the hunt for customers, right? And to establish some kind of longer term revenue stream to support the business. So given your comment that many of them will cease to exist, you kind of said, I think that's the way this thing goes. I guess it implies that as a health system to get into a relationship with one of these, one is being excessively cautious about not getting involved with somebody who then 6 months from now doesn't exist, and you're back to the beginning and redefining new relationships and strategies.
Yeah,
well, in a sense, does the large amount of possible solutions out there force a more conservative stance of health systems to choose wisely, choose carefully?
It does. At the same time, you also have to take risks because your competitive differentiator is going to come about when you're innovative in understanding and serving the needs of your population, right? And so it's a balancing act between the risks of driving innovation and the potential benefits of better experience for your patients and better outcomes and so on and so forth. So this is part of what we do is really help health systems identify technology partners, and they're all different, right? And you have to have certain rubrics and you have to have a structured methodology and so on in order to evaluate them. And then ultimately you have to sit down and contract with them in a way that you get the best, and they'll all be, especially the younger companies will be willing to do very, very attractive deals for you to lock you in for 3 years maybe. But you also have to have a way of getting out of it if they go under for whatever reason, or as is more likely to happen in today's context, they're acquired, right? Once they get acquired, you may find yourself in a situation where you have to now evaluate a much larger entity as your strategic partner, and that choice may not line up with your existing commitments to your existing technology partnerships. I'm just giving a wild example here. If you're an Epic shop and one of your strategic innovation startup partners happens to be acquired by Cerner, and then Cerner comes knocking on your door and they say, you know what, you got to give us a chance. Let's take your rev cycle or ambulatory or pop health or whatever the case may be. You're now left with having to make a choice, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I'll give you real examples. One of the big telehealth companies out there, Amwell, just bought a big chatbot company and a big mental health solutions company. Now, if you happen to be a customer for the chatbot company and you happen to be on Teladoc, tomorrow you're going to have the Amwell folks knocking on your door. So you've got to be able to think through this, but at the same time you have to take some risks, calculated risks, and not bet the farm, but do it in a structured and informed way. Which is, I want to share with you in that context. Again, there's a couple of things that I want to share. We have a reference model that we've developed for a patient journey based on, which point, if you look at it from a patient standpoint, they are, the vertical axis, pre-visit, visit, and post-visit. This is a very simplistic way of looking at it. And from a provider standpoint, acquiring, onboarding, and engaging. These are the different engagement touch points, and each of these has a number of solution providers that can meet those needs, right? So online search, a patient may be using a chatbot to search for their symptoms and search for a provider and search for an appointment and so on. They're looking for online ratings to understand how your providers stack up. Then the patient education, appointment scheduling, so on and so forth. But for each one of these touch points, like Find a Doctor, for instance, there's a dozen companies I can name right now who all offer Find a Doctor solutions. Some are better than others, some are more expensive than others, right? And so you're going to have to find a way to pick one that meets your needs. And the same thing, for payment solutions. There's a number of payment gateway solutions out there. All your patients are going to look for some kind of online payment option. Which one do you choose? How do you integrate them with your financial systems and with your EHR system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As the market grows and evolves and consolidates, all these solution providers are getting moved around between different points in this engagement journey. And you just have to be really, really conscious about the changes in the market, your digital engagement opportunities, and do your own consumer research to figure out which ones are important and make the investments accordingly. And what we do to help you with that is we have a framework for categorizing vendors. We categorize them into 4 different buckets. Innovators, who are your startups, basically they have a whole new way of doing it. SaaS solutions, cloud first, mobile first, subscription-based pricing. Custodians are your EHR firms, right? Epic, Cerner. Long-term strategic relationships, deep knowledge of your clinical workflows, and a user-based licensing model. Your enablers are the big technology firms, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, AWS. They're not your transactional systems of record, but they're one level above it. So they can be your system of record for CRM data, for instance, or analytics data, but they're not your enterprise data, but they are powerful platforms. They bring powerful capabilities in their particular domain areas. But they have a broad implementation partner ecosystem for you to leverage their platforms and get value. You're going to have to appoint or engage a systems integrator, which is your last category, the assemblers that we call them. These are the big firms, Accenture, Deloitte, and so on. They have expert knowledge on the tools and technologies. They have clinicians on their staff. They have domain experts. And in many cases, they use offshore-based development for low cost. Then their pricing models are different as well. So knowing these attributes becomes important as you look at your marketplace and you look at your choices in implementing your solution provider choices. I'll leave you with one more slide here. We've actually built a platform which contains, as I mentioned early on, it's a comprehensive repository of digital health implementations by the top 50 health systems and profiles of over 400 vendors. And we provide access to this platform as part of our consulting engagements with our clients. I'm happy to do a demo if at some point anyone is interested in that as well. So I'll stop there. If anyone has any questions on these 3 slides before we go to the last quick couple polling questions.
Hey, Patty, this is Sam. I do have a question. Can you go back to the model, the journey model, one before, I believe? Yeah. So is this model built through the length of providers or length of consumers, patients?
So if you look at we've actually refined this through our work with providers. So to that extent, yes, this is a provider-focused lens. But what we've tried to do is break it out into the different journey stages. If you look at the vertical axis, as a pre-visit, visit, and a post-visit engagement opportunity from a consumer standpoint. But it is mostly a provider-focused view, not a consumer-focused view. Whatever choices you make in investing in any of these digital engagement touch points, we recommend validating those with some amount of consumer research.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So we're coming up to our last few minutes here. Polling question 4, and I have one more right after this. Okay. What is your single biggest challenge to achieving your digital transformation goals? Budgets, internal resources, and by internal resources, I mean functional and subject matter resource, operational resources, IT support, or other. Now, I don't think you can specify, unfortunately, because that option isn't there, but other is good. We'll talk about it.
Just waiting for a few more people.
Okay. Budgets, internal resources, IT support, right? And other. Let's just spend a couple of minutes on this. Any comments?
We're largely responsible for IT organizations, so of course it can't be the IT.
I didn't want to say that. Well, there could be a small element of bias maybe in the respondent pool that we have here, but I'm going to set that aside. Everyone's above board here, so positive intentions assumed.
I selected other, and I, as I was thinking about the question, what I realize is I don't think I have a. When one talks about goals, sort of what's preventing us from achieving our goals, it presumes that you have a set of goals, and other than a bunch of what I'd say point solutions that sort of developed in an ad hoc manner to meet some evolving needs, at this point I'd say we don't have a comprehensive strategy we could point to, nor a comprehensive set of goals that we would want. And that's the other for me.
So thank you so much for bringing that up. I didn't explicitly put that in as a choice, but what we find is that one of the big things that hold back organizations from transformation is a solid board level, C-level strategy, which is documented, which is funded, and which is led by a clearly identified individual. That goes to our governance model here. So I'm assuming that I articulated it in probably a little bit more detail than you did, but I'm assuming that we're in alignment on that assessment. That is an important one. It's got to start with that. And we have seen in our digital maturity assessment, there are organizations that have implemented a number of these digital front door solutions and all these other technology tools, but they've done it in a fairly ad hoc fashion. So they're ahead on implementing, but they don't have a grand vision. I mean, I don't mean to make it sound like a grand vision, but at least some kind of a collective alignment around what is it we're trying to accomplish over the next few years, instead of just looking at reacting to what may be happening in the here and now in our marketplace. Okay, the internal resources, I will just make one comment. This is often, overlooked. I believe that based on all the work that we've done, your readiness for change, your readiness for transformation programs, as indicated by your availability of internal resources to support these transformations, is again a very important factor in how much progress you can make. We are right now working with an organization on their CRM strategy where when they started, they had nobody, and they funded some big transformation programs, and they just didn't have the internal resources. So their vendors were driving everything, and it was just a little bit chaotic. But thankfully they're out of it now. All right, last polling question. We still have a couple minutes. Charles, if you don't mind, and then I would like to keep a couple minutes for any last minute thoughts. Final one, what is your biggest competitive threat today for health systems? Is it retailers such as CVS, Walmart, and Walgreens? Big tech firms moving into healthcare? Think Amazon, Apple. Disruption by VC finance digital first companies? Think One Medical, or other.
Waiting for a few more people.
Okay, kind of evenly split. Disruption by VC finance, retailers such as Walmart, Walgreens. So these VC finance digital health companies, they are definitely on your radar, either as a partner or as a competitor. And so it's a space to be watched. And there's a reason there's so much VC money going into it. There's a lot of people who are betting that some of them are going to disrupt healthcare and, walk away with a big chunk of market share, right? And so, yeah, big tech firms don't seem to be a big threat. I would agree with that, except for maybe Amazon and Apple. I don't see them moving into your healthcare services space in a big way. They're happy to provide the technology. That's what I would say. Retailers, definitely, that story is unfolding. Any quick thoughts? Anyone?
Yeah, the new, what is it? Is it Amazon Cares or something like that?
Amazon Care, yeah.
Right, which was something I became familiar with only recently, it's an interesting, how much seeing how much money is being poured into that, where I guess the story is all last week it affected their quarterly earnings.
It's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket for Amazon, right? To throw a few $1 billion into that experiment and walk away if it doesn't work. All right, we are almost at the top of the hour. I just want to open the floor. Anyone, any thoughts? I hope this was useful and helpful. Love to hear your thoughts. We still have a minute or two, and then I'll share the document and encourage you to reach out to me if you have questions.
I look forward to doing the assessment.
I will send you, make sure you get the link.
Definitely.
I love some of the slides, and it'd be great if you could get a copy of the slides that were shared today.
Yes, I will share the deck. I will share the link. I will, Charles is going to send me the poll data as well. I'll share that too. So you'll have all of that in a few days.
Thank you.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, and I want to be really mindful and respectful of everyone's time. I want to thank you for being on the call and being a part of this conversation. I've really, really learned a lot. I hope it was informative for you. All the very best, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.